My ex stood up at my wedding and shouted, "You don't belong with him," so I took the mic and changed everything. I always imagined my wedding as a fairy tale ending. The music, the flowers, the faces of people I loved gathered together. It felt like a dream finally coming true. As I stood there, my hand resting in his, I thought about everything we had overcome to reach this day. He had been my anchor, my safe place, the person who made me believe in love again. But even as I smiled, a part of me feared that ghosts from my past might find a way to intrude. I brushed off the thought, telling myself I was overthinking. Yet deep down, something whispered that the story wasn't finished, that one chapter still lingered in the shadows. The ceremony began beautifully. Every word, every look exchanged between us, felt like a promise carved into eternity. But then, without warning, a voice thundered through the room, slicing through the calm. "You don't belong with him." The sound of it made my stomach drop. My ex was standing, eyes blazing, every guest turning to look at him. Gasps echoed around the room, whispers flooding like waves. My entire body froze, but my mind raced, pulling me back into moments I had worked so hard to escape. The nights of tears, the manipulation, the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak. I thought I had buried it all. But here it was, staring at me on the day I should have been free. For a moment, I wanted to disappear. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, my throat tightening. The girl I used to be would have shrunk, maybe even begged him to stop. But I wasn't that girl anymore. My fiancé squeezed my hand, silently asking if I wanted him to intervene. His eyes told me he was ready to protect me, to shield me from this storm. But I shook my head. This wasn't his battle. It was mine. I had spent years allowing my ex to control the narrative of my life, and I knew I couldn't let him steal this moment too. So instead of backing down, I reached for the microphone. My hand trembled, but my resolve didn't. The room fell silent, waiting, as I prepared to speak. I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing on me, but instead of fear, I felt something else, a fire burning deep inside. For years, I had been silenced, told I wasn't enough, manipulated into believing that love had to hurt. But standing there, in my wedding dress, surrounded by the people who mattered most, I realized I had the power to reclaim my story. My ex thought he could shame me, embarrass me, make me question myself again. But he didn't realize something vital. I had already survived him. His voice no longer had the power to define me. And as I looked at him, I knew exactly what I needed to say. I brought the microphone to my lips, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You're right," I said, letting the room gasp again. I could see confusion flash across faces, and even my ex smirked, thinking he had won. But I wasn't finished. "You're right, I don't belong with you. I never did. And it took me far too long to realize that. But today I stand here with a man who loves me without conditions, without games, without breaking me into pieces." My voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from the rawness of finally speaking my truth. A hush swept through the crowd as I turned my gaze fully toward my ex. "You had years to treat me right. You had every chance to love me the way I deserved. But you didn't. And now, you have no power here." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience, but I kept going. This wasn't just about my wedding, it was about all the moments I had lost to him, all the tears I had cried when nobody was watching. "You see," I continued, "love isn't about control. It isn't about tearing someone down just so you can feel taller. Real love lifts you up, even in your darkest moments. And that's what I found here, today, with the man standing beside me. I don't just belong with him, I choose him. Every single day. And nothing you say, nothing you do, can change that." My voice grew stronger with every word, and I could feel years of pain lifting off my shoulders. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. My ex stood frozen, his expression shifting from anger to shock, then to something like defeat. The guests erupted into applause, some even standing, not just for me but for the strength it took to say those words. I felt tears sting my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from freedom. My fiancé pulled me closer, whispering, "I've never been prouder of you." And in that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't just the end of one chapter. It was the beginning of a story where I was no longer the victim, no longer trapped by the chains of my past. As my ex stumbled toward the exit, still muttering under his breath, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt release. For so long, I had been afraid of confronting him, of what might happen if I finally spoke my truth. But standing there, microphone in hand, surrounded by love and support, I realized that the scariest part had never been him, it had been me believing I couldn't rise above. And now, with my heart pounding and my soul lighter than ever, I knew I had risen. My past no longer defined me. My present belonged to me. And my future was shining brighter than ever. When the ceremony resumed, it felt different. Lighter. Stronger. As if the entire weight of my past had been lifted, allowing me to step fully into the moment I had always dreamed of. Every word of our vows carried more meaning now, every promise etched deeper into my heart. Because this wasn't just about marriage, it was about choosing myself, my worth, and the life I wanted. And as I looked into his eyes, I knew I wasn't just saying, "I do," to him, I was saying, "I do," to a future where love meant freedom, trust, and the courage to never settle for less again. Later that night, as the music played and people danced, many came up to me to say how powerful my words had been. Some admitted they had been in toxic relationships too, that they had felt trapped and voiceless. My story had become more than mine, it had become a reminder that no one has the right to dictate your worth, and that it's never too late to reclaim your voice. And that was the greatest reward of all, knowing that by standing up for myself, I had given others the courage to believe they could too. When I finally sat down beside my husband, his hand warm in mine, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The noise of the crowd faded, the chaos of earlier forgotten, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. My past had tried to crash my wedding, but instead, it had given me the stage to declare my freedom. And as I rested my head against his shoulder, I knew with absolute certainty, I was exactly where I belonged. There are moments in life when our past tries to crash into our present, pulling us back into the shadows we fought so hard to escape. The story you just heard is not only about a wedding disrupted by an ex, it is about the courage to finally reclaim your voice after years of silence. Many of us carry invisible wounds from relationships, friendships, or even family bonds that left us questioning our worth. We bury those scars, hoping they'll never resurface, but they often do at the most unexpected times. And yet, these interruptions don't come to break us, they come to test us. The way we choose to respond determines whether we stay prisoners of our past or step boldly into freedom. In our daily lives, this happens every time we face criticism, judgment, or reminders of mistakes we once made. The true test isn't in avoiding the storm but in learning to speak with strength when it arrives. What this story teaches us is that silence often protects the abuser, not the victim. For too long, many of us bite our tongues at work when unfairly treated, or in relationships when disrespected, or even with friends when boundaries are crossed. We tell ourselves it's easier to stay quiet, but that silence only feeds the cycle. The bride in our story could have stayed silent, let her ex's words poison her moment, and allowed shame to rule the narrative. Instead, she spoke. She confronted, not with rage, but with truth. That act of courage turned humiliation into liberation. In our everyday lives, we too have those microphones, moments where all eyes are on us, waiting to see whether we shrink or rise. And though it terrifies us, choosing to rise is what transforms the story from one of pain into one of power. It also reminds us that love, in its purest form, is never about control. Many people mistake attachment for love, clinging to those who diminish them because they fear being alone. But love that destroys you isn't love at all, it's bondage. Real love, whether romantic, platonic, or even self-love, uplifts, nurtures, and inspires. Think about the times you felt most alive, most seen, most valued. It was never with someone who tore you down, was it? It was always with someone who saw your worth, sometimes even before you saw it yourself. And that's the type of love worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth holding on to when the voices of the past try to tell you otherwise. Another profound lesson is about choice. Life constantly presents us with crossroads: remain stuck in old patterns or step forward into something new. In the story, the bride made her choice clear. She chose a future where her worth wasn't negotiable. We too face these moments daily. Do we keep tolerating the toxic boss who drains our joy, or do we seek a healthier workplace? Do we continue in friendships that only take, or do we create space for ones that truly give? Do we keep feeding our doubts, or do we start investing in our dreams, even if they scare us? Every choice we make is a declaration of what we believe we deserve. And sometimes, the boldest act of self-love is simply choosing differently. Finally, this story teaches us that healing is not about erasing the past, it's about reframing it. Painful chapters will always be part of who we are, but they don't have to dictate the ending. In fact, the very wounds we once tried to hide can become the platforms from which we speak our greatest truths. Imagine how many people in that wedding audience went home thinking about their own lives, their own chains, their own silences. One act of courage has the power to ignite courage in others. And that's true for all of us. Every time we rise instead of retreat, we give permission for others to do the same. Our scars become lanterns, guiding others out of their darkness. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this journey. If this story touched your heart, if this reflection made you pause and see your own life differently, then I invite you to carry its lessons forward. Don't let your past define you. Don't let silence rob you of your truth. And above all, never settle for a love, a friendship, or a life that makes you smaller than who you were meant to be. If this video inspired you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment sharing your own reflections, and share this story with someone who might need the reminder that they too are stronger than their past. Together, we can create a ripple of voices rising, stories changing, and lives being transformed.